Hey everybody, welcome back to the Let's Talk Q&A show. This is the weekly show where we answer all of your questions. I'll be your host, John, and we don't like to waste any time on top. We like to dive right into the show, and that's what we're going to do right now with this week's first question. And this week's first question is actually from Bill Wisley, and he said, what would be the biggest flex in terms of physical media collection? And then I think this also ties in great to another question that we have. And this is from our channel director, Mr. Smelly Potato. And he said, what are 10 releases that have come out that you don't own but would love to have? So one of these at the top of the list, I think, is the biggest physical media flex at the current time. And that's that Never Ending Story big box definitive edition. Like, if you have that, like, that's probably the release of the year. I could never get it right now, especially at the moment. It costs way too much money, but it is beautiful. Like, if you're a fan of the Never Ending Story, that's the version you get. That came out from Imprint. Then Umbrella, I believe last year. Was it Umbrella or Imprint? One of them put out the Super Mario Brothers 4K Blu-ray box set. That's another one. It's just absolutely gorgeous. You know who has both those? Frank from Frank's Media Reviews. He always has stuff that makes me so jealous. He has some of the steelbooks that I've always wanted. Like, I believe he has the Harry Potter steelbook collection. That's another one that I've always wanted to get my hands on. Never could justify myself spending that extra money just because I'm not the world's biggest Harry Potter fan. But the Harry Potter franchise is somewhat special to me because my wife is just a huge Harry Potter fan, whether it be the books or the films. She rewatches those movies all the time. Just, in the middle of the day, she's like, I think I'll throw on a Harry Potter movie. So I always wanted to upgrade the 4K Blu-ray mainly for her, even though I'm not the world's biggest fan. Another thing that I always felt like I missed out on, like back in the day, Best Buy put out these beautiful Batman 4K Blu-rays. If you have this, I'm absolutely jealous. My cousin Matt has this. I think also Frank from Frank's Media Reviews has this, where they had the original 4 Batman films, Batman 89, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin, all on 4K Steelbook in a beautiful big giant Steelbook housing mechanism. They did the same thing for the Rambo franchise as well. That I had no problem. I just grabbed Rambo First Blood, and that's still the only Rambo film I own on 4K Blu-ray. I don't have any of the sequels, mainly because I don't want to watch them. But when it comes to the Batman franchise, I remember at the time I was just being a little bit too picky, and I paid for this in the long run because I was like, I'm just going to get Batman 89 and Batman Returns on 4K. I'm not going to get the steelbooks. And then I got them, and the regular slipcover versions aren't great. I also only got Batman Returns with a slipcover. So one of my favorite movies ever, Batman 89, I should have got that beautiful 4K Blu-ray steelbook collection. I just felt like Batman 89, and they released this on its own, Batman 89's 4K steelbook, I just didn't think that fit the 4K and what Batman 89 should be. I was being like a stickler about this when it comes to Batman 89. Like, I thought that, hey, just a simple black 4K steelbook with the Batman logo on it. One day, just put that out. That's all I want. I'd pay so much more money for that. But they just, I don't know, WB's sticking to their guns on something I really don't think they should. And then eventually I got the itch to get Batman Forever on 4K Blu-ray. These are all great 4K Blu-rays, by the way. So as far as the quality goes from Warner Brothers, they did a fantastic job, and I really wish I would have gotten that beautiful 4K steelbook collection. And another one is from Second Sight, Dawn of the Dead. The 4K Blu-ray release of that is one of the best 4K Blu-ray releases ever. Dawn of the Dead was out of print. It was so hard to get, and then the Second Sight released this, and this didn't get released in the United States, so you would have to import it, but you can import it right now off of Amazon. But it's not the original big box Dawn of the Dead edition, like with the green font. If you were able to snag that, that is just stunning. I was able to get, the more slimmed down version. Still has all the discs, still has everything you could have in that collection. But if you're a fan of the artwork, this one is just absolutely gorgeous, and I wish I would have got that, and now I'd be paying a pretty penny for it, so no reason for me to grab that one at the current time. And now a couple of Vinegar Syndrome 4K Blu-rays that, they're just so expensive, and sometimes, I'm not entirely in love with the film, but I would love to have these in my collection just because Vinegar Syndrome goes all out with the box art. But like The Keep on 4K Blu-ray, Showgirls on 4K Blu-ray, Sliver on 4K Blu-ray. Like, I would have loved to get The Tenant on 4K Blu-ray. Like, all that just because I would have liked their nice slip covers. But I don't run back to those movies that much, and that kind of breaks one of my golden rules. Am I going to actually rewatch the film? If I'm not going to rewatch the film, it's really hard to justify picking up that 4K Blu-ray. And I usually won't, so there's no reason for me. But like movies like The Keep, I'm kind of getting the itch. Like, should I have gotten that? We'll see what happens with Imprint's version of that. But those Vinegar Syndrome releases are just gorgeous. That's the thing. Like, their artwork, very similar to our videos. It's almost enough to sell me on picking it up just because I know the packaging is going to be a premium. Am I going to run back and watch Showgirls? Probably not. So me picking that up, it's a hard thing to get. But if I have my choice of the 10 releases that I want to get, I would absolutely love to get these Vinegar Syndrome releases. And then the last one is the Ingmar Bergman box set from the Criterion Collection. Ingmar Bergman is one of my favorite foreign directors that's ever existed. He's directed some great films, such as Persona, which is my favorite from him. And there's a great Blu-ray box set out there. Now, it's very similar to like the Wong Kar-wai box set, where they're kind of pulling things out and releasing them solely on 4K Blu-ray. So do I pick that up on Blu-ray and then never upgrade to 4K Blu-ray? Like, Wong Kar-wai is now having his second film upgraded to the 4K Blu-ray. We already got In the Mood for Love, but now we're going to get the Chungling Express on 4K Blu-ray. So now 2 of those movies out of the Wong Kar-wai collection have been upgraded to 4K Blu-ray. And it's like, do I grab that collection? But I still would love to have that Wong Kar-wai collection, and I would love to have that Ingmar Bergman collection. Those are the big ones, those big box sets. That's just a little bit out of my price range. Now, there are certain things that I will splurge for just because I love those types of box sets, and one of those, I think this is kind of a flex for me because I always wanted these. I always had Columbia Classics Volume 1 and 2 on 4K Blu-ray. So that's 1 and that's 2. But I was finally able to get Volume 3, Volume 4, and Volume 5 on 4K Blu-ray. And I always wanted to get 3, 4, and 5 in the collection. And thanks to Affirm, Amazon had all 3 of those on sale for 50% off. So I'll be paying about like $15 a month for like the next 2 years to be paying those off. And you know what? I'm pretty happy about that because there's probably no other way I'd be able to have those in my collection. And I had to have them. Like, those are my types of movies. I know not everybody loves those like prestige dramas, but I eat that shit up. You also get great movies in there like Starman. Like, that'll get its own individual review here on the channel. On the Waterfront. Little Women from 2019. I love that. Like, these are only on 4K Blu-ray in these collections, so it does kind of make it feel a little bit exclusive. Me personally, I wish that they would just release these all on 4K Blu-ray on their own. But, you know, since I have these, I'm really excited, and I actually kind of want to know from you guys. Do you want me to review just, like, each set individually, or review each movie individually? Definitely going to review such movies like Starman and On the Waterfront, and probably Sleepless in Seattle, maybe Tootsie, I don't know. I'm really excited about this, but I feel like having these is kind of a flex, right? I don't know. It's no never-ending story, though, that's for sure. So those were some great questions, Mr. Smelly Potato and Bill Wisley. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate those questions. And now the next question is from Kevin Kruger, and he said, how would you rank the Westerns in your Blu-ray collection? So this is actually really hard to do. I didn't really find any of my Westerns to be in bad quality, as whether they be on Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray. But going down the line, now you'll also see what I consider to be a Western, because some of these are modern Westerns or neo-Westerns, whatever you want to call them. And I do still consider those Westerns because they're hitting the same story beats. Like, you can technically consider, like, Roadhouse or even Star Wars a Western. But, you know, I don't put those on the list. I feel like those might be a little bit of a far reach. But at the bottom of the list is a 4K Blu-ray that's not the greatest 4K Blu-ray. It's good, but it's just not a big upgrade from the Blu-ray. And I had the Blu-ray, and of course I was like, oh, I should probably get the 4K Blu-ray. It was like $7, and it's not the biggest jump in the world to 4K Blu-ray, but the movie's fantastic. If everyone's like a big fan of Tyler Sheridan right now because of Yellowstone and all those spin-off shows and whatever that show that Sylvester Stallone's on right now. I'm not a big TV guy, but when Tyler Sheridan was just doing movies like Hell or High Water and Wind River, I was eating that shit up, and Hell or High Water is fantastic. I love this movie. I'll always go to bat with this movie, and it definitely is a part of the Western genre. Next up, now this just hurts to put down on the list, but it is still only on Blu-ray, and I would like an upgrade to 4K Blu-ray. Rumor is this year, Django Unchained. This is a fantastic homage to the spaghetti westerns that Quentin Tarantino grew up loving. Jamie Foxx is great. Christoph Waltz won his second Academy Award, and of course Leonardo DiCaprio. And then he followed that up with another Western that's only stuck on Blu-ray right now, and that's The Hateful Eight. This is actually a pretty good Blu-ray. You can see I bought it at Best Buy at the time. I bought it the year it came out because I was blown away. I had a great theater experience with The Hateful Eight, actually, because, you know, this movie takes place in the snow. The day it came out in theaters, I was on vacation. My first vacation from my previous job. I was excited. My wife was working, and I treated myself. It was snowing outside, but I had a Jeep at the time, and I'm like, I'm going to go to the movies, and I'm going to go see The Hateful Eight. So I saw this movie in theaters, and I was the only person in the theater other than like one elderly couple who somehow made it through the snow, and they were up front. So I saw this movie. It was snowing outside, and it was just a great theater experience. Couldn't wait to get this movie on Blu-ray. I still love this one, and let's hope for a 4K Blu-ray. Some people might consider this cheating, but Back to the Future Part 3, and this is why it's lower, because the 4K Blu-ray for Back to the Future Part 3 is fantastic. but you know, it's in the Back to the Future franchise, which is not necessarily a Western franchise, but I would argue that Back to the Future Part 3 is a Western, so it had to make the list. Next up, this is just a regular old Blu-ray, but this is, if this ever comes to 4K Blu-ray, there's a good chance this will be the best looking Western on 4K Blu-ray, and that's The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. This movie was shot by the greatest cinematographer of all time, Roger Deakins, and there's an argument to be made that this is the best film he ever shot. It's stunning. Just look up shots of this movie, even if you don't want to watch the movie, which is a great movie, by the way. I still think you should look up shots for it. And next up, I got Rollin' Thunder. I reviewed this last year on the channel. Definitely in the Western genre. This is about a guy coming back from Vietnam. He's got his buddy Tommy Lee Jones, a young Tommy Lee Jones in this movie. It's really a revenge tale, but you can see that this is the kind of movie that Quentin Tarantino was very influenced on. It's very much like also a exploitation movie, but I also think it does feel like a Western in a lot of ways. That one might be my biggest reach. Next up, I got Kino's release of High Plains Drifter. This is actually, I believe, and this is just a fantastic Clint Eastwood Western. Now, I heard some people complaining about the color timing in this movie. For me, I thought it looked great on 4K Blu-ray, the best I had ever seen it, but there are people who've been following around this movie since it came out, so they probably would know better than me, but either way, or I thought it looked great. Some people might not consider this a Western, but it pays homage, and a lot of homages to the 4K, to the film Shane, which is definitely a Western, and that movie's Logan. This is 100% a Western in my opinion. It's probably the best X-Men film. I mean, this movie it's a masterpiece in a lot of ways, and the 4K Blu-ray is great, and you can watch it in color, and you can watch it in black and white. Next up, Paramount presents release of Once Upon a Time in the West. I wanted this to be one of the best looking 4K Blu-rays ever. I knew it wasn't going to be when Paramount was the one putting out the release, but it's still a great one. This is one of my all-time favorite Westerns. It's just one of the best spaghetti Westerns you'll ever see. It is the best spaghetti Western you'll ever see, directed by Sergio Leone. Movie's a masterpiece. I just wish the 4K could reach the level of the actual film. Next up, I got The Magnificent Seven, which is an American remake of Seven Samurai, so you could argue that Seven Samurai is a Western film. You know, they kind of follow the same story beats, but in the United States, we got The Magnificent Seven, and this movie, it's fantastic. I love The Magnificent Seven. It's funny, because when I pulled this off my shelf, I'm like, I think last time I watched this was when this 4K Blu-ray came out. I'm kind of in the mood to rewatch it. The Magnificent Seven is great. The remake, it's fine, but it's nowhere near the classic. Next up is actually my first 4K Blu-ray that I ever bought, and that was Unforgiven. The 4K came out in 2017. Now, it's starting to show its age. It's an 8-year-old 4K Blu-ray, but still, the 4K Blu-ray itself, but still the film itself is a masterpiece. It's the greatest Western that's ever been filmed. You know, it's a revisionist Western. It's kind of undoing everything you know about the Western and, like, what the hero is and what happens when he gets old. And I could go on and on about Unforgiven. I would love to do a full breakdown of that again one day, but the 4K Blu-ray is great. Next up is a film I saw for the first time last year, and that was Lone Star. This is very much a neo-Western in the same vein as, like, No Country for Old Men. Beautifully shot. Love the way the story is told, and this 4K Blu-ray from Criterion is fantastic. And the next two came out last year, just showing how 4K technology is getting better. This one's a neo-Western, and that's No Country for Old Men. One of the best films the Coen brothers ever put out. I'd put it at number 2, only behind Fargo, but you can really make an argument for this film. The 2007 Best Picture winner with one of the greatest villains of all time in Anton Chigurh, played by Javier Bardem. Even with that ridiculous haircut, the fucking movie is fantastic. And this 4K Blu-ray, nothing might not hit a 10 in here, but, you know, we're getting a lot of 8.5s and 9.5s out of 10 on here, and it's a great 4K Blu-ray. And then, of course, the best Western on 4K Blu-ray, and an argument can be made by a lot of people that's the best Western of all time. And it's the first one by Warner Archive, and that is The Searchers on 4K Blu-ray, directed by John Ford, starring John Wayne. You know, a match made in heaven between the two of them. How many great classic films, and especially Westerns, did they give us? And luckily for us, Warner Archive, this is essentially a boutique-level 4K Blu-ray put out by Warner Brothers. They really gave us all the bells and whistles, and thankfully, the transfer is stunning. Shot on VistaVision with Technicolor, it transferred so well to the 4K Blu-ray format. I can always recommend The Searchers to anybody who will listen. So that was a great question, Kevin. Thank you so much, buddy. And the next question is from Kylie Tinkle, and she wrote, "Who is the greatest actor to never have a leading role in a film?" So I was actually looking this up because I can't think of off the top of my head. Like most actors, like at least get a shot, whether it be in like some shitty B movie. Like how many bad movies have like actors who've never acted again gotten leading roles? So it's very hard to figure out guys who've like stuck to the supporting actor role. The first one that came to mind, and Google said this, was John Goodman, but that's not true. John Goodman was a leading man in the film Matinee. Now you could say, okay, well he's not like the stereotypical leading man in that movie. We spent some time away from him. It's also about the kids. I could see that, but really, the movie's sold on John Goodman. He's in the center of the movie poster, so can't really say John Goodman is that guy. So the two I got are William Fincher and Luis Guzman. Luis Guzman has always been a supporting actor. You see him pop up in so many things, whether it be a drama or comedy. Usually it's a comedic role. He's just kind of got a naturally funny voice and great comedic timing. I've always loved Luis Guzman, but he's definitely never been a leading man in any movies, but he's always a fantastic supporting actor. Go back to like movies like Boogie Nights. I even like the movie The Adventures of Pluto Nash. I always think of him in that movie, him and Eddie Murphy, and people shit on that movie. It was shelved for years, but I always like The Adventures of Pluto Nash. Now, when it comes to William Fincher, a lot of people probably think of The Dark Knight or Heat, which is funny because, Dark Knight and Heat are very comparable movies, especially with their bank heist scenes. And William Fincher, the thing I always think of him most in, and this is like probably the closest he ever got to being a leading man, was on the show Prison Break. He was great on that show. He played he played a detective searching for these guys, and just like a lot of people and a lot of characters on that show, and very similar to the Fast and Furious franchise, an antagonist then eventually becomes a protagonist and joins the team. It's ridiculous, but I thought William Fincher was great, got to show off his acting chops on that show. So William Fincher's another great actor who I think never really got his flowers to be a leading man. It doesn't look like he would have too many gears, but I think Prison Break really let him stretch his legs a little bit. So those are my two choices for that, Kylie. Thank you so much for that question. And the next question is from Mr. Mice, and they wrote, share 3 of your most disliked/hated movies ever, and then try and say 3 nice things about each. The first movies that popped in my head, they're pretty recent movies. I've been pretty lucky. I've been able to avoid a lot of bad movies. Or I just kind of like look at things, as one of my favorite YouTubers, Simon from What Culture, would say, I'm a little bit of a positive Pete. So like, I just love going to the movies. I love watching movies. So it's very rare that I leave a movie and just go, holy shit, that movie just was terrible. But since I've been on YouTube, I've been, upping my movie watching, and a lot more bad movies like slip through the cracks. And a big one would be like movies like Halloween Ends. I fucking hated Halloween Ends. But if you watch the movie itself, it's shot very well. It also has a pretty decent third act. So I can say some things nice about Halloween Ends. One thing that's really hard to find anything nice to say is about the film Morbius, which stars Jared Leto as the title character. And this is another one of those Spider-Man universe movies that don't feature Spider-Man. It's just his villains hanging out, having their own movies, and Morbius is one of those films. And Morbius is just absolutely horrible. I think it's worse than Kraven the Hunter and Madam Web and all the movies, Venom 3. Like, those phoned-in generic action movies, just CGI-filled superhero movies. Absolutely terrible. But Morbius is the worst of them. But one thing I can say good about Morbius is the opening credits are nice. I love the colors, like the purples and the blues. As you can see from watching this channel, big fan of the neon colors, and the opening credits for Morbius featured that. So, we kind of came in pretty hot with the credits, but then the rest of the movie just nosedives after that. And then last but not least, I'll probably talk about the film The Strangers Chapter 1. Now, I watched that movie and I couldn't believe how bad that was. It's like you wanted to take the original film, which a lot of people consider a horror classic to this point, and you essentially tried to undo everything in that movie and make the same film, but take out everything that people liked about that movie, even redo scenes from that movie, change some lines around, and it just falls flat the entire time. The acting is never good. But one thing about that movie is it looks pretty good. I actually appreciated the production design of the cabin in the woods. I thought all that stuff looked great and felt like a bit of an upgrade from the original Strangers movie. Even though I do like the house in the original Strangers movie, it's a very unique setting, like kind of on a cul-de-sac where it's the only house on the block almost. And yeah, there's woods around it, but it's a little bit more cleaned up. Still kind of feels like a neighborhood, whereas this one's like just a cabin in the woods. Like if you were trying to differentiate it that way, I think you kind of succeeded. But unfortunately, again, the movie's just absolutely terrible. So there's not too many good things I can say about The Strangers Chapter 1. They're getting a part 2, and I'm supposedly getting a part 3. How? I mean, again, we're still selling the franchise on the original Strangers movie. The second Strangers movie, Strangers Prey at Night, extremely underrated. If you're a big fan of 80s slasher movies, you'll love Strangers Pray at Night. That's what they're paying homage to. Now, Strangers Chapter 1, it's just bad. Don't watch it. So that was a great question as well. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Deathstalker83 asked, what do you think about the Mandela effect in movies? And, the Mandela effect, if you're not familiar with it, is pretty much something that you are 100% sure happened, and, there might even be proof that this happened, and maybe even a mass group of people remember it the same way. The big thing, one of the big ones is, the Berenstain Bears. A lot of people call them the Bernstein Bears. I'm still not sure what the right one is, actually, but, you can just look up the title. But a lot of people remember the name being different. Fruit of the Loom didn't include one of the fruits. But the big one actually happened in movies with the film Kazam. And then there was another movie that starred Sinbad, but this isn't true at all. I think that was called Shazam. And people remember this movie actually existing. And I actually know somebody in my real life, two people, my wife Faith and my cousin Matt, two people who are very close to me, swear to God that this movie existed. I'm telling you that the movie Kazam is what you're thinking of, starring Shaquille O'Neal, which is a very bad movie, so it makes sense why you would confuse the two. There's no real proof, but people truly believe that Shazam was a real movie. Or is it Shazam? I can't even remember, because isn't Shazam a movie? But people do mistake that all the time, that movie actually existed starring Sinbad, because there is an image out there of him dressed like a genie. But, there's plenty of images of Sinbad dressed in Windbreaker too, so you can mistake that for Shaq, I guess, as well. But Kazam is the movie that I think everybody is thinking of, and again, not a good movie. Shaq, I love Shaq, but Shaq is not a great actor. And he also asked, he said, this is a little off topic, but what are your top 10 1990s B movies? My question for the week, and do we think we'll ever get Space Invaders from 1990 on 4K Blu-ray? Well, as far as Space Invaders goes, there's always a chance at this point with labels like Vinegar Syndrome or Blue Underground. Speaking of 1990s B movies, Blue Underground put out a lot of fantastic B movies on 4K Blu-ray. And let's just get right into this list, because I actually was watching a lot of 1990s B movies to get into doing this, because I'm a big fan of B movies. I am. And the argument always is about B movies. What qualifies as a B movie? One of my favorite podcasters, YouTubers, I've always listened to the Cinephiles, the Top 10 show, John Roca. He would always argue that the movie Predator was a B movie. And the pushback is that's a 20th Century Fox film. So it's got a big budget. John McTiernan directed it. Stars Arnold Schwarzenegger. But, the plot of the movie is a B movie level plot. But, the special effects kind of have to be cheesy. The acting cannot always be great. That's what a real B movie is, a real low budget film. You don't have a lot of great money at your disposal. Look at what Troma puts out, or Roger Waters puts out. Those are B movies, the Pink Flamingo, Romeo and Juliet. My favorite B movie ever is the Toxic Avenger. I love that movie. That doesn't make the list because that came out in the 1980s. But as far as the 1990s B movies go, now again, everyone's definition of a B movie is kind of different, so this kind of goes off of mine. So at number 10, I got Romeo and Juliet. This is actually directed by the upcoming director of Superman, the head of DC, James Gunn. I cannot wait for that movie to come out. I want to see what he does, because again, this is the guy who directed Romeo and Juliet, and Sean Gunn, who pops up in all of James Gunn movies. Sean Gunn's his brother, so of course he's taking care of him. You can go see him all the way back in Romeo and Juliet, which is just absolutely ridiculous. There's a review here on the channel for that. At number 9, I got From Dusk Till Dawn, which I didn't know this was a B movie going into it. The B movie twist kind of in the second act when, spoiler alert, everyone's revealed to be vampires and it becomes a vampire movie. I was not on board with that the first time I watched it. It's come around on me. I'm hoping for that 4K Blu-ray to be true and to be actually coming out, and then maybe I'll revisit From Dusk Till Dawn, because Quentin Tarantino's in this movie. That's kind of what sold me on it. Didn't love the twist, but this is Robert Rodriguez and me. As weird as it sounds, we were never always on the same wavelength. Very rare movies like The Faculty, and I kind of grew up with Spy Kids, but other than that, never been the biggest fan of Robert Rodriguez, but From Dusk Till Dawn is a great film. It just took me a long time to come around on it. And number 8, a film I saw for the first time last year, Troll 2. The The sequel to Troll, even though there are no trolls in Troll 2, there's just the title of the movie with some of the worst acting you'll ever see. A ridiculous plot, ridiculous special effects. One of those movies that it's so bad, it's good. It has to be seen to be believed. You've probably seen the, oh my god, clip from there, but it's, oh my god, it's just a blast. That's what a good B movie is. It's a blast. At number 7, Tremors. The whole franchise is basically just a bunch of B movies. The first one, though, has at least Kevin Bacon in it, kind of raising the value of the film. But Tremors is an absolute blast. Has an Arrow Video 4K Blu-ray release. So does Tremors 2. I only really like the first Tremors movie. At number 6, we got 1997's Jack Frost. I believe it was 97, and 1998's Jack Frost was the one that stars Michael Keaton. A lot of confused parents in the 1990s were renting the wrong Jack Frost, thinking they're renting a holiday classic. Yeah, I said holiday classic in Jack Frost. And instead we're going home with the serial killing snowman movie. And I love the serial killing snowman movie, which also features Shannon Elizabeth. Might be her first role. And how does Shannon Elizabeth die in this movie? Well, she gets fucked by Jack Frost, who takes his nose and moves it down to the position of where his dick would be. So, just imagine, that's what this kind of movie is. Over the top, ridiculous, with ridiculous special effects. I love Jack Frost. Number 5. It's only a number 5 because I couldn't rewatch it because it's impossible to rewatch. The rumored 4K Blu-ray just keeps getting rumored but hasn't come out yet. And that movie is Peter Jackson's Dead Alive or Brain Dead, depending on what it's called in your region. Most people just call it Dead Alive at this point. But this is one of the most over-the-top, ridiculous movies you'll ever see. Not my favorite Peter Jackson movie. That's still The Frighteners. Which is kind of a me movie, but not really. Not in the same vein as Dead Alive is. So that movie, I just want it on 4K Blu-ray so it can move up higher on the list because I haven't seen it in years. Number 4, I got Darkman. Sam Raimi clearly loves B movies. All of his movies before he got to like Spider-Man were essentially B movies, or like, I mean, that's not true. What am I saying? Like The Quick and the Dead and A Simple Plan. Those aren't B movies at all. But Darkman definitely is a superhero movie on the B movie level. You know, you get the same stop motion effects, the cheesy effects that he loves to do. The superhero, he wanted to make his own superhero film. He didn't get a real one, so he made his own superhero. And Liam Neeson is the great Darkman. This got a bunch of sequels, not made by Sam Raimi, but the original's a classic. Also has a good 4K Blu-ray. At number 3, Frankenhooker. I gotta grab this 4K Blu-ray. Frankenhooker is fantastic. Let me just tell you the premise of this movie, alright? A guy's fiance, New Jersey people, so they got like ridiculous New Jersey accents. You know, he's an inventor, and he invents this lawnmower that can be controlled by a remote control, and his fiance, dumb as she is, gets run over by the lawnmower. She runs herself over, essentially, when her body just explodes into a bajillion pieces. All that's left is her head. Now, this guy, we'll call him our Dr. Frankenstein. Well, he's got to get some body parts. All he's got is the head. So what does he do? He's going to go get some hookers. And he's going to make them explode because they're going to smoke super crack. And they love crack. And then this just switches to some really cheesy effects as well. And, of course, he gets the body parts he needs, puts his wife back, his fiance back together. And you know what? She wants to get right back to work. She wants to get right back on the street, back to hooking. And she could only say, like, certain things like, you got any money? What do you want? Like, and her mouth's always, like, all messed up. This is basically the stripped down B-movie version of the film Poor Things. Frankenhooker is fucking great. At number 2, Maniac Cop 2. 2 and 3 came out in the 1990s. Maniac Cop, the original one, came out in the 1980s. Bruce Campbell's in that one, Tom Atkins. Bruce Campbell's back in this one. Not as much of a major role anymore, but he is in this one. Maniac Cop 2 and 3 also have Blue Underground 4K Blu-rays. Maniac Cop 3 is one of the best 4K Blu-rays you'll ever see. The problem is Maniac Cop 3 is not a good film, whereas Maniac Cop 2 kind of takes the Halloween End storyline of the serial killer taking another serial killer under his wing and just showing him the ways. It's ridiculous, and that's what a good B-movie is, and Maniac Cop 2 is a good B-movie. And at number 1, Sam Raimi, the king of this stuff, Army of Darkness, 100% a big budget B movie, using those cheesy effects. I mean, we get a bunch of little Bruce Campbells in that movie. I love Army of Darkness. You know, the franchise it's so unique, the Evil Dead franchise. You know, you get the first movie, straightforward horror movie. The second one is basically a retelling of the first movie, but we're also adding in the comedy elements. Then the third one, Army of Darkness, is 110% a comedy, and I love the movie for it, and it's definitely the best 1990s B movie. Now, Frankenhooker could rise up this list. I think if you could take anything away from this, check out Frankenhooker. you can watch it right now on Peacock for free, or on Tubi or anything like that. I just can recommend Frankenhooker. But that's a great question. I really do appreciate that. And the next question is from Dark Room Reviews, which you guys should definitely head over to his channel and check it out and subscribe, and you won't regret it. And he said, on movie nights at home, do you make popcorn or you save that for the theaters? Movie nights at home, it's nothing really. Every night's movie night for me, so sometimes I'm just eating dinner with the movie. Sometimes I'll have popcorn, but I always have to get popcorn when I'm at the. Well, that's not true. Sometimes I try to save a little money, but for the most part, it's definitely the best at the movie theater. You won't get the same experience. AMC thankfully does make some great popcorn. The local movie theater by me, PJ Cinemas, their popcorn's pretty good. It's always been pretty good, and they have like 7 different sizes, and it's more affordable than like AMC. But AMC does have some great movie theater popcorn. That smell always been very hard to replicate at home. So, like, at home, it's nothing, like, too special. Every once in a while, I'll have popcorn at home, but it's not, like, essential to the home movie theater. It's not essential to the home movie watching, if that makes sense. I'll have anything at that point. I've had cookie sundaes. I've just had candy. I've had salads against my will. But, popcorn, it's essential for the movie theater experience as long as you can swing it. Because at this point, you got to bring the D to your house to get some popcorn and soda at the theaters. But that's a great question, Dark Room Reviews. I really do appreciate that. And Mr. Wolf Viking, who I don't think is following YouTube anymore, but he asked me a question what my top 10 Christian Slater movies are, and I couldn't really pull a top 10 Christian Slater movies, but I think of Christian Slater, I think of 3 movies. So the 3 movies I always think of with him are Broken Arrow, which also stars John Travolta, directed by John Woo, one of John Woo's better directed films, actually his American debut. And then, of course, you got Heathers. That's a great one from the 1980s, also starring Winona Ryder. I love that movie. Great Arrow Video 4K Blu-ray release. And then the best one he was ever in was True Romance. A true leading man in that movie as well. He's great. He's charismatic. You just love him. Him and Patricia Arquette have a great relationship. It's basically a lighter version of Badlands, that movie. I'll always go to bat for True Romance, one of my favorite movies of all time. So if I'm doing the top 3 Christian Slater movies, those would be the top 3. It's just hard to pick 10 for him because he kind of disappeared. When I think of Christian Slater, for the most part, other than True Romance, it's just jokes about how handsome he was from like girls on like sitcoms back in the day. Like Christian Slater was like the guy that people would say, oh, Christian Slater, isn't he dreamy? Like that's what people were talking about Christian Slater in the 1990s. I knew about him before I actually knew who he was, just because of those shows that I was watching as a kid. And then our last question of the week is from Mozart's Ghost. So he must be really excited about Amadeus coming to 4K. And he wrote, my favorite this year was Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Body Double as the runner-up. Think you got what it takes to rank every year we got 4Ks? 23 and 24, no doubt the top, but I give the edge to 24. So, yeah, this is a really hard question to tackle because I had to go back and try and remember when I was buying movies on 4K Blu-ray. I boarded the 4K Blu-ray train in April of 2017. So, not in 2016. 2016, I would definitely put at the bottom because movies were just kind of coming to 4K Blu-ray. You can see, like, the early 4K Blu-rays. I reviewed a couple here on the channel. And the transfers were just really, like, tuned-up versions of Blu-rays. They didn't really have it all under their feet yet. Some, like, I think by the time we got to 2017 and I got my first 4K Blu-ray in Unforgiven, I really felt like that's when we were starting to get at least sprinkles of great 4K Blu-rays. In December, we got the Nolan movies on 4K Blu-ray, which was huge, and for the most part, those transfers are good to great. None of them, like, hit, like, 10 out of 10 levels. The closest would be, like, Interstellar. Dunkirk, which, that's also a good 4K Blu-ray. Like, those are all great 4K Blu-rays, but Oppenheimer is the best Nolan 4K Blu-ray. I feel like if we did the Dark Knight trilogy over now and, like, Inception, those would be even better 4K Blu-rays with the modern technology. So I can't put 2017 second to last. I would actually put 2018 second to last, and then I put 2017 above that. Even though we got those great Nolan 4Ks, there is one big negative about 2017 we got to look back on, and that is that we got Terminator 2 on 4K Blu-ray that year. It got re-released in theaters for 3D, and apparently that's the transfer that got stuck on the disc, and that's why it's all fucked up. That even came out with the arm. It was a huge deal. Still so disappointing. But we also got Blade Runner. We got Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner, which is still a fantastic 4K Blu-ray disc. So right now I'd go 2016 at the bottom, second to last 2018, and then third to last 2017. Next up, I got 2019 because we got great 4K Blu-rays that year, like The Shining, which is still a fantastic Warner Brothers studio release. And that's also the year we were talking about it earlier in the show. We got the Batman 4K Steelbooks. I'm pretty sure it's the same year we got First Blood on 4K Blu-ray, which is a big one that sold me on the 4K. Actually, that had to be earlier, First Blood, so scratch that. We just got some great packaging that year. 2020, we got Full Metal Jacket, which is a great 4K Blu-ray. You guys saw my Columbia Classics. That's the year we got the first one, and those are Sony 4K Blu-rays, some of the best. Like, we got Gandhi. I know not everyone loves Gandhi, but that's a fantastic 4K Blu-ray transfer. Lawrence of Arabia, one of the greatest epics of all time, came to 4K Blu-ray that year. Might have been the same year as another great David Lean 4K epic, Bridge on the River Kwai. I mean, these movies those movies translate so well to the 4K Blu-ray format. Just the way they're shot with the VistaVision and Technicolor. I think VistaVision was used on Lawrence of Arabia. Definitely Technicolor. And then 2021, they really started to come out swinging. Scream Factory gave us the Halloweens. Not all of them. They gave us 1, 2, 3, and 4 on 4K Blu-ray. All of those are fantastic 4K Blu-ray transfers. Those were also released individually, which is very different than in 2022 when we got like the Thorn trilogy, H2O, and how those were all like packaged together. The original ones, when we got them on 4K Blu-ray, you could buy them individually. They had these great hardbox slip covers on there, great alternate artwork. Halloween itself, this had the different color timing from the Lionsgate 4K Blu-ray, so we got 2 of them already. Both are good, but that Scream Factory 4K Blu-ray is fantastic, and the release for Halloween 3, which is my favorite of them, is also just absolutely incredible. You also got the Indiana Jones on 4K Blu-ray that year. Yes, the packaging for the initial release isn't great. That's the ones I have, but I rewatch those transfers all the time, and those are definitely some of Paramount's best transfers. But then 2022, when I started reviewing 4K Blu-rays here on YouTube, you got some great ones, including what I think is the greatest 4K Blu-ray ever in Roadhouse from Vinegar Syndrome. This is where I really started to take notice of Vinegar Syndrome. And they haven't been able to put out anything better than Roadhouse, but of course, a little bias. Love Roadhouse. That's also the same year we got Top Gun Maverick, which is another one of the greatest 4K Blu-rays that's ever been released. It's going to give your system a workout. Also, that's the same year that Warner Brothers put out most of their Christmas classics like Elf, The Polar Express, Christmas Vacation, and A Christmas Story in 4K Blu-ray, and those were all huge upgrades. Elf it's just so noticeable how big those 4K Blu-ray upgrades are, and we got them all that year as well. And then yes, I agree with you, Mozart's goes 23 and 24, and the thing is, it's hard to for these to go out of order because technology keeps getting better, and 4K Blu-rays at this point are just stunning, like we were talking about earlier with the searchers. So what year is better? Would I give it to 23 or would I give it to 24? It's tough. 2023, we got such great 4K Blu-rays as Thelma and Louise, Oppenheimer, which is another one of the greatest 4K Blu-rays ever. We got Across the Spider-Verse, which is another great animated movie on 4K Blu-ray. And Carlito's Way, The Warriors, and then last year we got The Searchers, No Country for Old Men. I think I might give the edge to 2023 just because of the quality of the releases. It's tough. They're neck and neck. Last year we also got Crimson Peak, the Conan Chronicles. The last 2 years have been phenomenal. In 2025, we're getting a lot more spoiled. If you go on Blu-ray.com, the amount of 4K releases we get each week now is incredible. Back the first 3 or 4 years, Criterion didn't even jump on the 4K bandwagon until 2021. They really had their feet dug in on just sticking with Blu-ray, and that the 4K technology wasn't enough for them to start upgrading the 4K Blu-ray, the extra price of that. But then they got on board, and we got such great 4K Blu-rays like Menace to Society and Citizen Kane on 4K in 2021. So technology has just made us get more 4K Blu-rays and at a quicker rate with high quality releases. So for me, gun to my head, I'm going to go 2023 over 2024. So that was a great question, Mozart's Ghost. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. And that's going to do it here for this week's episode of the Let's Talk Q&A show. It's a little bit of a shorter week, just a jam-packed regular week for me at my regular Joe job, and I have a lot of things going on in my personal life, so hopefully you guys don't mind it being just slightly shorter. And make sure you guys leave some questions for next week in the comment section below, and while you guys are down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We also have channel memberships, so if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggalo, who has a great YouTube channel himself, or a channel director like Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews and Mr. Smelly Potato, you can look for all that information in the description below. But if you got no money to throw away, guys, don't you worry about it at all. We just hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.